Hey YouTube, this is CGS064 coming at you with another deck profile. Doing a more common deck in this format for September 2012, that is Geargia Karakuri. I've been testing it out, it's been doing pretty well. I thought I'd share with you guys today the actual deck, the build I'm running right now. So first off, we have 3 Geargia armor, heart and soul of the deck. When it's flipped, you can add a Geargia monster from your deck to your hand. It can flip it face down. It works really well when your opponent attacks into it, and it works well with the Karakuris. I'll explain that a little bit later during the video. But 3 of these, that's the main part of it. The next we have 3 Geargia arsenals. Search out your Geargia monsters, in particular Geargia armor. So it gains 200 for each Geargia monster face up on the field. And then you contribute itself to get a Geargia armor or another Geargia monster from your deck. So it's a pretty good start off, especially if you duality into that, if you don't draw Geargia armor. Next, 3 accelerator. The Kizan for Geargias, basically if you have a face up Geargia monster, you can summon this card from your hand. It's good to exceed for Geargia X or to synchro with the Karakuris to go OTK. Especially if you have a tuner in hand, or if you have a birdman in hand, you know, just bounce to hand special and then special Geargia accelerate again. Next we have 2 Karakuri strategist. Very good card. Basically when it's normal special summoned, you can change the battle position of a monster in the field. Good to use on your Geargia armor when it goes face down, or good to flip your opponent's monsters into attack or to put into defense if they have weak defenses. So it can be a good card to use to your monsters and to your opponent's monsters. And a sync for Bure. Next we have 2 Karakuri Watchdog Saizans. Good rank for level 4 tuner for machines in general. Good synchro with the Geargias to go for Burrito or any level 8 synchro, or to exceed for Geargia X to add some search power to your deck. It's a really good card, and I like the fact that it's got 1800 defense, so it's a pretty good starter. If you don't draw into any of the Geargia monsters, you can just set this as a defense. Next we have 3 card Cardi. A lot of people argue the relevance of this card. I like this card because if you draw duality and draw into this card, basically it can help you set up your second turn for your big OTK plays. Basically, you know, you tribute draw 2 cards. Duality set to basically the Solemn Warning, compulsory, MSTs, any form of counter. It's a good start off to give you the extra hand advantage for your OTK. Next, 1 Unix Ally Birdman. Birdman in particular, I mean, it's not necessary, but it's really good because if you flip Geargia armor and you add the accelerator to your hand and you have the Birdman, you can special the accelerator and then bounce the Birdman back to bounce the accelerator back to hand for Birdman, and then special accelerate again. So it's an easy synchro for Bure to get the Saizan and then to go off with that. So basically if you have Geargia armor and Birdman, or an Arsenal accelerator and a Birdman, it's a pretty good start for an OTK. And lastly, Gauze. Gauze good to prevent basically anyone from OTKing you if you have no cards in your field, if they heavy storm the dark hold you, or you have nothing on the field, you take it directly, you Gauze, you can block them. So that's the monsters, and that is 9, 12, that's 18 monsters. So it's a pretty 18 to 22. It's not a bad ratio, especially because you've got card D and you've got 2 dualities in the deck. It works really well, I believe. Like, it's really good. Moving on to the spells for the deck. The staples: 1 Dark Hole, 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Pot of Avarice, 1 Heavy Storm, Book of Moon, good for Geargia armor to flip face down, 2 Mystical Space Typhoons, 1 Limit Removal, Machine OTK, no need to say, 2 Dualities, help you search the deck, and Forbidden Lands. So basically, Forbidden Lands to protect your synchro monsters if they're going to be stopped, or your Geargia armor if they try to compulsory it back to your hand when you flip it, or any other monster, big monster you summon. Forbidden Lands is your protection. And that is that's 12 spells for the deck. So I mean, it's a pretty good start. I mean, if you draw a duality first, or it's pretty good. So that's the spells for the deck. Next we have the traps, which is 2 Bottomless Trap Hole, 2 Compulsories. Basically good if they're going to Nobleman your Geargia armor, or Bulmas into any of your cards in your Geargia cards, you can add them back to your hand. 2 Dimensional Prisons, remove and play any monster attacks, good against heroes, in general any other monster attacks. 1 Solemn Judgment, 2 Warnings, and 1 Starlight Road. So that's 10 traps. So 18, 12, and 10, yeah. So that is a 40 card deck. So it's a pretty good standard build. I mean, you've got 10 traps, 12 spells, 18 monsters. So it's a pretty good ratio. So you got the duality, you got the card Ds. It's really easy to go into your protection for your plays. Next we have the extra deck. I've got 1 number 30 Acid Golem of Destruction. Good with your 2 Strategist or a Birdman. I mean, this and Zermains. They're the only rank 3s I use. I mean, this deck doesn't really go into rank 3s as much, so I mean, this is probably the only good rank 3s that are out there at the moment that you could use. 1 Fairy King Albidirch. They're all Earth, they're all level 4, most of them are level 4. Basically, if you can't run over an opponent's monster with a Synchro or an Exceed, or you don't have any tuners, you can basically summon this to get over their betas such as Hyperion, Largia, any sort of monster that's going to give you trouble. You can use him to weaken all your opponent's monsters or all non-Earth monsters, and then basically get advantage of that because all your monsters are Earth. 2 Geargia X, the Exceed for this deck. Detach 1, search a level 4 lower machine. Really good for this deck. I mean, it goes beyond saying like this card, the most expensive card for this deck, but also the best card for this deck. It goes without saying. You can search for card D, you can search for Geargia, you can search for Birdman, you can search any machine. It is so good. I mean, I really think this is like the best Exceed for this deck. 1 Maestro, the Symphony Daijin, 1 39 Utopia, and 1 Steelson Roach. So Roach, I like Roach because this format, there's a lot of decks that, I mean, it's a mixed deck format now. So I mean, this goes good against mirror match Geargias. If they try to go OTK, they can't synchro. They can't agents. It's good against Chaos Dragon, Lightsworn. There's a few decks that this deck can hurt, and that's the Exceed section for this deck. Next we have the Synchros, which is start off with Black Rose Dragon. Obviously, I mean, level 7 is pretty easy to make with this deck. You got 2 Strategists, 1 Birdman, and you got so much search power with this deck. With the Geargia X, you can pretty much search for the Birdman or search for the Strategist if you need to. 2 Bure and 2 Burrito, the synchros that make this OTK so good. You use the synchros with the Strategist and the Geargias, combine them together to get out at least 1 of each, or 2 of one and 1 of the other. Really good synchros. It works well with Geargias. It goes without saying you OTK with this deck really easily. 1 Scrap Dragon and 1 Stars Dragon. The 2 other level 8s are Stars Dragon for Starlight Road, and obviously you can also synchro for it, and Scrap Dragon for cases where you may have dead warnings or dead cards you can't use, and your opponent has some face downs that you're afraid of. Summon Scrap Dragon, just destroy. That's the extra deck for this. Next we have the side deck for this. 2 Effect Failures, good against wind-ups, good against mirror match Geargias, good against a lot of decks in this format. Insectors, rabbits. There's a lot of decks that it's really good against. Like I said, I mean, this format, there are so many different decks out there. Wind-ups in particular is this deck's worst matchup, and even mirror match. So I mean, Effect Failure does really good against wind-ups, and it goes good against any sort of deck that can potentially OTK. Heretics, Dragoonity, and like I said, Geargias as well. Next we have 2 Kinetic Soldiers for 6 Sam, for Elemental Heroes, any other warrior deck. And the fact that you got Geargia X and you side deck this, it's so good because it's a machine, so you can search it out really easily against heroes and 6 Sams to get the advantage. Then we have 2 Thunder King Ryos. Thunder King Ryo, multi-purpose is format really good. Prevents searching and negates a special summon against basically most decks like Rabbit, Mirror Match Geargia, Wind-Ups, Dark World even. I mean, they can't search with Snow. Any sort of deck that really, it's pretty good to have in this format. As I said in my previous video, I mean, most people now would main 2 of these, if not 3. But because this deck's OTK and it kind of counteracts the Geargia armor, I only would side deck these in drastic situations. Then we have the third Mystical Space Typhoon for basically Dark World, Elemental Heroes, Dragoonity, any sort of anti-meta TGs that would destroy or somewhat affect the plays that you can make with this deck, excuse me. Then we have 2 Dustinados to go along with the MST. Basically, we want to make sure there's no back row so that when we go for OTK plays, the only thing they can potentially stop us with is an effect failure or potentially max C. But generally, if they drop a max C, you'd still continue your play and hope they don't draw into a Gauze with Geargia, just so that you can just finish them off. 2 Goza Match, good against wind-ups, good against rabbits, good against a lot of decks that basically have different attributes. I mean, you can even use it against E-heroes, so they try to super poly you. If they have a Stratos or Alias, they can't super poly for Gaia. Basically, they can't super poly because they have to fuse for the same attribute on their field. So basically, it would prevent them from super polying your cards, so it can be good. And basically, any other deck that would have a lot of different types, GBs even. I mean, you don't see them a lot, but they can pop up every now and then, so Goza Match would be good, and even 6 Sams. Water Cree, basically help against, like I said, anti-meta decks. TG Stun, you can even use against rabbits, possibly Dark Worlds. Even Burn and Final Countdown, they don't pop up, but they do eventually, and this card can be good to pretty much lock down their plays, even Exodia as well. When they try to go hope for escape or like gift card and all that, Raw Decree would pretty much kill them. And lastly, 2 Soul Drain. Soul Drain's good against TGs, Dark Worlds, Frog Monarch, just so that no effects can activate in the graveyard or remove from play. Even hurts removal because when they try to use DD Survivors or DD Scale Plane's effect, they can't because Soul Drain will negate that effect. Well, this is my deck profile for Karakuri Geargia. Leave your comments and suggestions below and give me any pointers, suggestions, or any comments on the deck. This is CJS064 with another deck profile. Over and out.